All right, another raw and unedited video. I just started thinking about some stuff today, and my son's here. I'm just gonna turn the camera around. My husband brought this guitar home from work the other day, like 2 nights ago. I got up in the morning. I'm like, what is this? And this is my son. I don't know. You probably can't hear him because it doesn't have an amplifier. He's playing Blackbird by the Beatles. I love that song. Okay, so he might be in the background. But I want to talk about this. I'm going to go over here into the kitchen. And I made some bread this morning. This is a special loaf. Last week, I got this this phone call. I didn't get the phone call, but I could see that it was coming in, and it was from an old roommate. Like, we hadn't talked in a few years, honestly. And she was a roommate of mine before I got married, and she is a chef. And I learned a lot from Sharon. I love her. So I see her name come up, and I hurry and call back. I missed the call, and she's like, "Oh, Carol, it was an accidental call. I really didn't mean to call you." I'm like, "Sharon, what are you doing?" And she says, "I'm packing to move to North Carolina." I'm like, "You what?" She has lived in Utah all the time that I've known her, for way more than 30 years. I'm like, "What?" So I won't tell the story of how she ended up moving to North Carolina, where one of her daughters is living. But being my roommate, she's like, "Oh, maybe Kansas City would be a good place for us to stop on the way to North Carolina." And I'm like, duh, of course it would be. So she actually came, her and her husband, and spent the night. And my son, the one that was playing the guitar, he likes cooking. He took a cooking class, and they started talking cooking. And Sharon's like, "Oh, well, you have to make bread. You love making bread. Here, I have a sourdough start." So she goes out to their car, brings in a sourdough start. Okay, here, I'll show you. She gave me some, of course. And it lives in here. It's just this. I mean, I put it in just a container that I had. I'll show you. I fed it last night, and see, it kind of gets all bubbly. Anyway, so this is the first loaf of bread from that start. It's almost like a lineage or something. Like, I don't know where she got this start from, but I will forever think about Sharon every time I use that start. It can make pancakes. Anyway, that's a whole other topic that we could talk about in terms of sourdough and this passing along of a start and then spreading that to other people. So you could probably come up with a good analogy on that. If you saw a recent raw and unedited video, I had one of those days where it wasn't good, and I talked about going through that, and talked about the 5 loaves and how that was enough to create food for 5,000. Well, this morning I had this profound thought, and well, I thought it was profound. I was listening to a podcast and something came up. I'm like, oh, I haven't really thought about that. So I don't know about you, but I go to a church, and we have sacrament, or some people call it the Eucharist or communion. And the method that is used, I don't know if this is true across all churches, is the priests will take a loaf of bread, it's sliced, and then they break pieces, and then that is passed communally through the entire congregation. And I hadn't thought of that until this morning, that this bread started as a whole. And of course, if you are a Bible person, you know that Christ says, "I am the bread of life." I thought about how we all communally take from that loaf and take that into us. And in that way, symbolically, we are all unified. We are all part of something that used to be whole. Now it's in pieces. And that makes us all a big part of a whole. And in this way, these small pieces are multiplied. These symbolic bread, well, it's not symbolic, but the symbol of the bread going to each of us, one little piece at a time, creates this bigger unified community. So have you ever noticed that if you eat with someone, even if they are a stranger, you get to know them? There is something about partaking of a meal together. And in traditionally families eat together, there's something very unifying about partaking of a meal, everybody eating together, and then we are more unified. Anyway, I just thought that was kind of profound this morning. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just profound in my head. But anyway, I hope that maybe that makes you think of who should you eat with. Maybe even share a loaf of bread with. If you were here, I would so love to give you some of this yummy bread, and you would also be sharing a little piece from my friend Sharon because it was from her start. Maybe another analogy. It can be, well, let me show you. We've got ants in our kitchen. Not my favorite, honestly, but ants are kind of like the same analogy, right? Where there's a lot of them working together. We've just got to figure out how to let them go back to their own environment. I don't like them in my environment. Anyway, okay, guys, have a great day, and we'll see you next time. So it's gonna make a mess, Travis. Like, I would love if you had like a cutting board underneath or something. It's really good. It's so simple. It's just the starter, flour, water, salt. It's delicious.